Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode. Highly anticipated return of the Cover One Roundup. It has been a few weeks since you've seen me, since you've seen David, and I know my Twitter mentions, I don't know about yours, David, my Twitter mentions have been overflowing with people asking, when is the Roundup coming back? When am I going to get to see?
Oh, it's constant. It's
right.
I have to turn my phone off at work now. It's just it's over. I
Can't even
can't
go
do
on
it
Twitter.
anymore.
The people, I've uninstalled Twitter. I've reinstalled MySpace, and they even came over there to figure out when the Cover One Roundup's coming back. The answer is tonight. Unfortunately, Rob is not with us tonight. He is out of town, and it sounds like he won't be here next week either. So, David, sorry, you're stuck with me for 2 weeks. But
do what
yes.
I can.
Unfortunately, I was ill last week, so and then 2 weeks ago we had the preview show, the combo crossover with the Air Raid Hour for the Patriots game. But this week we are finally back here live again to talk Buffalo Bills football. This week we are discussing the Buffalo Bills. What was the score? 31-14 win over the low-key dysfunctional Carolina Panthers, as David and I were talking about off air. We'll get into that, but a lot of fun stuff happening in Carolina. A lot of fun stuff happened yesterday in Orchard Park. Again, Buffalo Bills expected victory, but a much-needed victory to stay in playoff contention. We'll talk about our takeaways from this game, talk about what went right, what went wrong, all of that jazz. So I don't think I introduced myself. My name is Kyle Silagyi, if you couldn't read the name tag there, the little name thing. And joining me this week is David Fox, Cover One contributor. David, what's going on?
Another Bills win, doing all right. Just keep ripping off those wins, and maybe we'll find ourselves in January.
Maybe. Well, see, that's the issue. Sorry, I'm retweeting the podcast now. That's the issue with the new schedule. Well, granted, there were some games in the past where, like, depending on how the schedule added up, you would play January games, but sometimes you wouldn't. So when you said January football, it was another synonym for playoffs or postseason. You know, it was another way you could throw it in.
Yeah.
But now when you say the Bills could be playing January football, it's like, yeah, they're going to play Week 18. Like or this year, Week 17. They're going to play those games. They are on that schedule. So,
which, like, by the way, saying Week 18 sounds ridiculous. I refuse to say Week 18. I'm just going to call it the final week of the season. I don't care how much longer it sounds. I refuse to say Week 18.
How about the pre-postseason?
I like that. Pre-postseason.
NFL's, they're going to add me to the marketing team.
Pre-postseason, TM.
Jason Taylor writes, they scored 31 points, but the offense still looked a little bit off. They did. We'll get into this. The offense, it took a little bit of time to get going. Speaking of taking a little bit of time to get going, my fantasy team, it took a little bit of time to get going. Still waiting for them to get going in this week's playoff matchup. They're going to lose, unfortunately. Look, I'm the league commissioner in my league. I am making league awards. I'm giving myself manager of the year. But even if I wasn't the commissioner, I would still win manager of the year. That's how effective I was in my trading and maneuvers this year. I got Cordarrelle Patterson for nothing. I essentially told the guy, or at the end of the season, I told the guy who had Cordarrelle Patterson like days before the trade deadline, I was like, your team sucks. I need a running back. I will give you Josh Jacobs and Cam Akers, and you could keep Cam Akers next year. And he was like, yeah, okay, that's a good deal, I guess. So the people, they love my fantasy talk. But I got Cordarrelle Patterson for the playoff run. He got me 4 points yesterday. So what are you going to do? The fantasy football gods came back and bit me in the behind. But now, if I want to continue playing fantasy football this year, or fantasy in general, I will have to do so on Underdog Fantasy. They are the sponsor of this show and also Cover One in general. What is Underdog Fantasy? That's a great question. It is a relatively new fantasy football or fantasy service that Cover One has partnered with for this season. There, you can do player props, parlays, all that good stuff, especially, again, with the fantasy football season for me, and I'm sure a lot of you, coming to a close. Unfortunately, a premature end. Thank you, Cordarrelle Patterson. And I'm the idiot who played Michael Pittman over Gabriel Davis, and I was playing Travis Kelce. It was just, a medley of shit this week for me. But go check out Underdog Fantasy. Use promo code COVER1 and get a free $10 when you make a deposit of $25 or more. Again, that is promo code COVER1. Thank you, Underdog. So There is no roundup this week, so we are just going to get straight into takeaways here from this Bills victory over the Carolina Panthers. And before we do that, David, just what are your overarching thoughts from this week's win?
The Panthers, for as dysfunctional as they are, like they still are a pretty good and talented defense. And like coming into this game, it was a pretty tough matchup for the offensive line going against Derek Brown and Brian Burns and Hassan Reddick. It's like Hassan Reddick and Brian Burns are like might be the most athletic pass rushing duo in the NFL. Yes. Like them and maybe Clowney and Garrett in Cleveland. But that was already going to be a tough matchup. And then you get Dion Dawkins and John Feliciano both on COVID. Feliciano was like the morning of. And so that was just like we're getting a rookie third-round pick who's played well at right tackle, but now he has to play at left tackle going against Brian Burns, who is going to eat him alive. And that's exactly what happened. In spite of all that, though, the Bills still played reasonably well on offense. It wasn't spectacular despite the 31 points scored. But it was good enough. And after a slow start and some bad penalties, which we'll get into, they did what they needed to do, and it was truly just about outlasting the Panthers because there was no way that the Panthers offense was going to do really much of anything, especially scoring, especially since they were trying out kickers during warmups.
That was quite funny. Sounds like you're sleeping on Cam Newton, though. Sounds like you're not being too affectionate towards Cam Newton there.
I say this quite dejectedly as a longtime Cam Newton stan. The man is done. He is officially Dunyan rings. Like, I don't know what else. There's not a whole lot that man can do right now, and it pains me to say that.
Like, I admit, right, like that I am not the smartest person in the world, right? Especially when it comes to football. I am not, I am not the Einstein of football, even though some people in the chat often say, Kyle, you're intelligent when it comes to football, one of the smartest to ever do it. I'm modest, and I will admit that I have my shortcomings. But when I watched Cam Newton play football last year and watched his arm strength or lack thereof, and I read people on Twitter in the offseason saying that Cam Newton still had it and he's still a starting quarterback, I was like, what am I reading? Yeah. What are they watching? Am I watching the wrong player? Like, I don't know what is going on. But yes, you bring up the offense, how it still sputtered at times despite the 31 points. We're back to that point in the season where it's like, a couple of weeks ago, and by that I mean early season, it was like they're scoring 30 to 40 points a game, but they still stink maybe. And then they actually stunk for a while, and now they're back to scoring points and still stinking. So it's really fun. You brought up Spencer Brown, and we'll just get right into the takeaways here. My first takeaway is that Spencer Brown, not a left tackle, at least not right now. Yes, obviously it is difficult for any player, especially a third-round pick from a Division II school, I think UNI is, or Division III, whatever. I'm going to say Division II. UNI, that screams Division II to me.
Well, I'll have my producer fact check this. Producer is me.
But regardless, right, a third-round rookie from a small school, to ask him to play a position that he hasn't been preparing for, at most 48 hours before you're asking him to play that position, it's difficult. And especially, again, like you said, when you're asking him to go up against the likes of Brian Burns, Hassan Reddick, Yetur Gross-Matos, it's a tall task. And, Spencer Brown may be very tall, but it was too tall for even him. It was very clear that he struggled yesterday. Allowed, according to PFF, 3 pressures and 1 hit. Feels like a lot more than that. It felt like something was always going wrong with Spencer Brown. Again, had 5 penalties. 5 penalties from Spencer Brown. 3 holds, 1 of which offset, 1 false start, and then a taunting call on a 12-yard Devin Singletary run. Look, the holds, you can, maybe a couple were ticky-tacky. There were a few that were, or at least one where it was like, okay, that's a hold. Have an argument about the other ones, but false start, that's on Spencer Brown. And the taunt, like, come on. There's no one else to play. There's no reason for him to do that, to put his team in a position like that. Again, cost the Bills yardage with mental and physical lapses throughout the day. Look, I think we have been saying on this podcast that Dion Dawkins actually isn't bad. He is quite good, despite what people may say, that Dion Dawkins should be cut and replaced with Spencer Brown. No, at least not now. Spencer Brown should be, again, he's shown flashes at right tackle this season, but I think that's where they should continue to develop him. But again, this is two rough weeks in a row with Spencer Brown. Again, 5 pressures last week to Shaq Barrett, a few more today. Just not a great outing. Again, tall task, but not a great outing. And he drank a beer, so.
That's true. Yeah. Roman brings up a really great point that I kind of forgot about. I think it was just before the 2019 season when people were like, oh, they should sign Cam Newton. Or maybe it was before the 2020 season. I can't quite remember. But it was an absurd take then. It's even more absurd in the light of day now.
I agree with it now, though. I am now team sign Cam Newton.
But yeah, with Spencer Brown, I mean, he was really struggling yesterday. I mean, he still has a lot of trouble just getting into his sets, especially against really athletic pass rushers, which is interesting because he's like
an athlete,
a 99 percentile athlete. Like it's kind of crazy. That's the reason why the Bills drafted him from UNI, which is an FCS school. There you go. Division I FCS. There you go. D1 athlete.
So they are in contention for the number 1 overall recruit, right? They're the new Jackson State.
That's right.
In 20 years, Spencer Brown's going to be the head coach of UNI and be stealing the number 1 overall recruit.
Why do I feel like Spencer Brown would be a great college recruiter? All right, we're getting off topic. But yeah, he really struggled. And that taunting call yesterday, look, taunting is a dumb rule to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
It is being unfairly and unjustly enforced this season. That being said, it was just about the dumbest thing I've ever seen an offensive lineman not named Jordan Mills do in a Bills uniform for the last 5 years.
Oof.
I saw it happen. I saw him get up and scream at this dude's face 3 feet from the official. I'm just like, oh my God, a positive run play. And you're going to do that right after. Okay. All right. Whatever. And that was a 12-yard run. Devin Singletary finished the game with 88 yards, right? On 22 carries.
Yep.
That would have been 23 carries for 100 yards. He cost Devin Singletary a 100-yard game.
And those tweets would stop about how Josh Allen's only had 200-yard rushers or whatever in his career.
Yeah. Imagine the takes if the Bills had won that game yesterday with Devin Singletary running for 100 yards. That it would be nonstop, but nobody thinks about that right now. They're just like, oh yeah, it is okay. But one little run.
A lot of great stuff. A lot of great stuff here in chat. Why writes, love the attitude though. Brown has so much potential. I could really see him being elite given time. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Again, he has shown he has brought energy to an offensive line that at points this season has been lethargic, right? He really did inject some of that attitude, some of that energy that the line needed. That being said, he's not a left tackle, at least right now, which is, again, fine. And that's what's great, right? Is Dion Dawkins is still young. They have him under contract for the foreseeable future. He is the left tackle. When should Roman ever reach elite status? Should Spencer Brown ever reach elite status? I think Dion Dawkins will be the left tackle when Spencer Brown is elite on the right side. But Spencer Brown just had a rough day at the office. But again, it cannot be overstated that he drank a beer, which is objectively hilarious. The best thing coming out of that game was Stephon Diggs and Spencer Brown splitting a beer after Diggs scored a touchdown. Looking like Stone Cold Steve Austin out there. Has anyone made Brown 316 shirts yet?
Not that I've seen, but somebody needs to work on that. Can we get Del Reed to work on that?
Someone make a Brown 316 shirt because I will wear it every week. Spencer Brown goes back to the sideline. Sean McDermott's like, you can't drink beer. Spencer Brown's like, what? You can't drink beer. What?
Oh my gosh. I remember saying this yesterday to my dad after that celebration. I was like, I think one of my favorite moments in NFL history is that picture of, I think, Len Dawson at the halftime of some game. I think it was the Super Bowl, where he's just sitting in a folding chair, drinking a beer in one hand and smoking a cigarette with the other. I'm just like, man.
We are 2 weeks away from that with Spencer Brown.
Yes.
We are after Gabe Davis scores a touchdown against the Falcons in a couple weeks. He will just steal a dude's cigarette and just smoke it. Chain smoke a pack of cigarettes on the field, and the Bills will tweet the video of it. I love it. We just shat on Spencer Brown for how many minutes here? But still, everything is forgiven because everything is, you can write it off to an extent. You can be like, okay, given the circumstances, this is not evidence. This does not prove that Spencer Brown is any less of a player than we thought he was a couple weeks ago. Because the circumstances.
It was a tough matchup. It was tough circumstances. I'm not gonna bury the dude off of that. It is what it is. And he's just gotta, first of all, move back to the right side and just move on from it. I think that he seems like the kind of person who has the attitude, just put that behind him and just keep moving forward. He seems like somebody who has a lot of confidence in himself. And why wouldn't you when you're 6'8", 320?
Right, when you are, according to Relative Athletic Score, the most athletic person to ever play offensive line. That definitely is a confidence booster. Yeah. But yes, again, not really concerned about Spencer Brown moving forward. More so concerned about the taunting. Right. Again, love the confidence, love the swagger, but when you're costing your team yards, in a game like this where you're doing it with penalties and your play, just quit while you're ahead or before you're too far behind. So. Yeah. If you don't have anything else to add about Spencer Brown, we will move to your first takeaway.
So my first takeaway, and I'll be curious to see if anyone else sees this during the week as they go through the film of this game. But Ed Oliver is a problem for opposing game plans. There were a couple of times where it looked like he was just going to make the most devastating tackle for loss. There were a couple of times where it looked like he was going to do that. And then the play just went away from him. And it really seemed like the Panthers were just like, I don't care what we do. We are not running to Ed Oliver or we're going to die. And it seemed like they were either running the play away from his side or they were using guards to trap him, just try and get him away from the play. And that's kind of significant for someone like Ed Oliver in his third year, where again, we're kind of, this has been a very consistent theme for this season. And Ed Oliver is just he's having a great year. No one knows about it because he has no stats to show.
Even less in this game, right? Because we're talking about the plays that he couldn't make because they went away from him.
Right. I mean, and it's extreme. It was so impressive to see him just knifing through this god awful offensive line. And I'm pretty sure he was lined up against John Miller most of the time, which
old friend.
Friend
of the show, John Miller.
Old acquaintance of the Buffalo Bills franchise, John Miller, who I was genuinely shocked was still playing in the NFL yesterday. But it was very, very impressive. And I think also on that fourth down sack that went to F.A. Obada, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought I saw Ed Oliver pull out a nasty spin move and probably would have sacked Cam Newton if F.A. Obada didn't get there first.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, it was very, very, very impressive. And Jason also brings up a good point. Harrison Phillips has been playing pretty well all year. Low key. He hasn't been superstar amazing, not Ed Oliver, but he's been playing really well, especially considering where he was last year. He was a healthy scratch for multiple games last year. Yep. He's been playing pretty well, pretty consistently. I think Eric brought this up yesterday on Twitter. The use of the cub front that they use, for those that are unfamiliar, first of all, go to Eric where he talks about this because he'll explain this a lot better than I will. But essentially, they're playing like their three defensive tackles, Starr, Harrison Phillips, and Ed Oliver, basically from like inside the B gaps, just trying to create as much one-on-ones as possible, specifically to attack run games. And it worked, sorta, kinda. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But it's been good to see Harrison Phillips like playing consistently well throughout the course of the year. I think that's gonna help this defensive line as a whole moving forward.
It's just, this is kind of a tangent, but we're talking about how Harrison Phillips and Ed Oliver looked really good. Like the interior of the defensive line looked good, and then later we're going to talk about how the run defense was bad. It's just funny how that works. But just to again further tangent on Harrison Phillips and the Cub package, the Cub look or whatever. I interviewed Harrison Phillips for Cover One in the off season, and I asked him about the Cub package because Eric asked me to ask him about the Cub package. Could not tell you what Harrison. I do not remember what Harrison Phillips said about that. But if you go on the Cover One YouTube channel and look up Harrison Phillips, you will find my interview where he talks more in depth about the Cub look, the Cub package. So. If you want to do that after this podcast, don't leave during the podcast to go watch that. You can, if you're interested, watch it afterwards. But yes, great points all around about Ed Oliver. Again, it is a shame that it is not showing up on the stat sheet, the impact that he is having on the game, because it just further adds into narratives, right? There will be people who look at his stats, not necessarily Bills fans, more national people who are like, oh yeah, he's a bust, wasn't worth the 9th overall pick. They could have had Jeffrey Simmons or whatever, who's a very good player. But like Ed Oliver is, as you said, now someone who teams have to game plan around. You want to avoid him when you can. And that's not going to show up on the stat sheet, but it's going to impact the game in more ways than one. So
and it's really interesting thinking about how, if you're, especially with like run games in particular, if you're scheming away from Ed Oliver, who is like objectively a relatively undersized defensive tackle, you're now running towards guys like Harrison Phillips and Star Lotulelei, who are bigger, more stout, very like tough against the run types. So that should theoretically help the run defense in a lot of different ways. Of course, that's all dependent on how an offensive coordinator sees things, how the offense runs things, and then that's a whole other rabbit hole that we don't have time or knowledge to get into. So it's great to see Ed Oliver being the player that he is, and the player that they drafted him to be.
Cosign. Moving on to the next takeaway. My next takeaway. Yes. The run game, not bad. The run game was actually a kind of good a little bit.
Run game, question mark?
I know, right? Yeah. Whispers, run game. It wasn't like, and again, that speaks to how not great the run game has been this year, is that I'm making it a talking point when the team had 119 rushing net yards. And Devin Singletary had 20.
Progress is progress.
Exactly. And I more so want to talk about the strategy when it comes to the run game and how they finally diverted from their old strategy. I'll get into it. But Devin Singletary wasn't the lead back. He wasn't the 1A. He was the running back. Zach Moss was inactive. Matt Breida had 1 carry. So Devin Singletary was the running back yesterday, had 22 carries for 86 yards, 1 touchdown, 4 yards per carry. Not like an incredible game. Not like, obviously he didn't win anyone their fantasy playoff matchups, I don't think, but he might have. Let me know in the comments if, Nick Avino. Oh, hey, Nick. Right. I still don't believe in Singletary. I'm still team move on. I'll get into that because I agree. But he showed yesterday that he is the best running back for right now, I think. I'm still not, team you don't get another running back because you have Devin Singletary. I'm firmly in the camp of if you can upgrade, and there's got to be better running backs than Devin Singletary available this offseason. So if you can, through either free agency or more preferably the draft, get another guy. But as of right now, as we move into the postseason here and you want to establish the run, Devin Singletary gives you the best opportunity to do that, in my opinion, right now. Again, just going back to this game, they relied on Devin Singletary. They didn't do this strategy that they've been doing all year where it's literally every other drive, not really giving any player, either Singletary or Moss, and in more recent weeks, Breida, not really giving any of them the opportunity to get into a groove, to establish themselves as the running back for that game because they'd be out the next drive. So, you really halt any momentum that they could produce before they had the opportunity to produce it. And I'm not saying that's why the run game hasn't been great because, let's be honest, both Moss and Singletary are limited players, and the offensive line hasn't created any push for the running game or any holes throughout the year for the most part. So the circumstances have been against the running game, but yesterday when they just focused on getting Singletary the ball, again, and he had over 20 carries, right? And that's another thing. His touches came like you've had games in recent weeks where Singletary will have, 15 touches, but 6 or 7 of them will be receptions near the line of scrimmage. Yesterday, he had 23 touches, 22 of which were carries. So it was just run the ball. No, don't be tricky about it. Don't do anything fancy. Just run the ball. Again, not a great game. Offensive line struggled to get push at times, but it was progress. It was an improvement. It was, it showed that they want to establish the run heading into cold weather here, heading into the postseason.
Well, and it shows that they are actually capable of doing it. And I think, we've seen this whole debate about, running backs and their value and all that sort of stuff. And generally speaking, I've agreed with the Bills' strategy regarding running backs using sort of mid-round picks to try and get them for low costs, but also not overvaluing them by investing some huge first-round pick or signing some due to a huge contract. That's all well and good. Also, let's get some good players. And the frustrating part is we've seen flashes with Singletary, we've seen flashes with Moss. Moss has just fallen off a cliff, and I don't know what to do with him at this point, especially since this is only his second year. And what do you do with that? But with Singletary, he's shown flashes pretty much each year that he's been with the Bills. But this past game was probably the most encouraging of any game he's played more recently, just because he was given the carries. He played really well. And again, other than if it wasn't for a Spencer Brown taunting call, he would have had 100 yards rushing on 23 carries. That's a little over 4 yards per carry. That's good stuff. Mm-hmm. And that's with 2 of your starting offensive linemen missing. And, having to shuffle your right tackle to your left side, putting your right guard to right tackle. There are a lot of reasons why they shouldn't have had really any rushing yards, and they end up getting almost 100 against a good run defense. So I actually feel relatively encouraged by this. I don't know how much better it'll be moving forward, but I feel better about it than I did before. It doesn't feel like they're just sort of banging their heads against the wall. It now feels like they have a plan and a strategy, and that they're going to stick with that. And that feels encouraging more than probably anything else. Because before it just sort of seemed like nothing's working. We got to try something. Okay, that didn't work. Now we got to try this. Now that didn't work. All right, let's bring in Matt Breida. Well, that kind of worked, but then it's
they just didn't stick with anything because nothing was working.
Right.
So there were a few weeks where, what was it against? Was it against the Bucks where they didn't run? Again, I haven't been on in 2 weeks. I don't know where
in the entire first half. I don't think they ran the ball.
Where it's like Singletary had his touches where they were getting it to him on just passes in short yardage. So they tried to extend the run game, simulate the run game, but again, just yesterday, and someone wrote here, Mr. West Ashley wrote, it was bootleg options and misdirection, very special running scheme yesterday. That's because I said that they didn't do anything fancy. I meant in terms of like they weren't overthinking themselves in terms of, like, oh, I'm going to get it to middle. I'm going to get it to Singletary in open space by making him run to the line of scrimmage and then passing it to him. It was just hand him the ball. Terms of that's how they got him the ball, was handing it to the running back, which crazy, right? Crazy idea. But and again, I think the best takeaway or the bigger takeaway is the strategy is that they, like you said, they have a strategy moving forward here, and it is going to be focused on one running back, I think, because it sucks, right? Because I like Moss. I like Zach Moss a lot. I think in theory, a player like Zach Moss is something that could be very helpful for this offense. A lead back type player in this offense. And especially in Buffalo, right? Like cold weather, you want a north-south head down runner like that. But just Zach Moss, at least this season, isn't it. Not looking like he can be it this year. And again, like you said, he's only in his second year, so it's going to be interesting to see what they can do moving forward with Zach Moss, what they do moving forward with Zach Moss. But as of right now, it's got to be. And again, I don't expect Devin Singletary to get 22 carries every week moving forward. But again, if you can get him 15, 18 touches as a running back, handoffs, awesome. And he's picking up 4 yards a carry. Awesome. They're moving closer to being average, which is all we want.
Yeah, that's all for this team, which is so pass heavy because it needs to be pass heavy and it should be pass heavy. You don't need to be some ground and pound team that goes away from their identity. Just be average. This is what they talked about in the offseason. They talked about not wanting to run the ball more, just running the ball better. Well, they hadn't really done that either. But now they're starting to get to that point where they are running the ball better. And that's what they need to do. That just be average. Run the ball, especially late in games. And that was probably another good part of yesterday was late in the game, that final drive, they were running and running the clock.
Getting push. Yeah, it was great.
It was like, yes, this is what I want to see. I don't want to like hold on to my butthole every time we get to the end of the game here. Just like run the clock out. Run this down and then do some 4th and 2 bootleg that you can catch them napping on. This is what they were supposed to do. So yeah, I mean it's very encouraging so far. What they do moving forward, especially against the remainder of their schedule, Patriots, is what's going to be more important.
Again, cosign. Yes, I want a fun running back. That's all I want. Like I could again.
As a Michigan State fan, may I offer you a Kenneth Walker III?
Don't want him. You know what I want to do because I hate myself. I want to trade a 4th round pick to the Jacksonville Jaguars for Laviska Shenault, put him at running back, and then I just want to play Madden with it. That's all I want to do. Laviska Shenault would be electric, and you know it.
The Kyle Silagyi, Laviska Shenault love continues.
He would be the best running back in Bills history. Just give him number 34.
You want Laviska Shenault to be Deebo Samuel, is what you're saying.
That's what I do. There are too many receiving backs. We need more running receivers, okay?
We need running receivers.
That's what we need more of in this league. That's the new trend, is everyone's like, I want someone who could play a Taysom Hill-like role, or I want an Alvin Kamara. No, you want a Deebo Samuel. You want a Laviska Shenault. That's what every team needs. Every team needs a Laviska Shenault in order to be successful. Just ask the Jacksonville Jaguars. Moving on. What is your second takeaway from this game?
Well, you'll get into to Gabe Davis in a little bit more in depth, but we need to talk about Gabe Davis in relation to the rest of the wide receivers on this roster. So this is a very deep wide receiver room, and it's a great strength for this team. Stephon Diggs is very, 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 very clearly the number one receiver. That showed yesterday. You score a back shoulder fade against even an older Stephon Gilmore. That's really impressive. I mean, just having a quarterback and a wide receiver that can do a back shoulder fade for a touchdown is like still really cool to
me. Being able to be good is cool.
Right. But then after that, it's kind of been a little debatable on who the actual wide receiver 2 is. And, for the start of the season, it was definitely Emmanuel Sanders. Like Josh Allen was looking all the way to Emmanuel Sanders, and it showed up a lot. Like the Washington game, multiple touchdowns. Kansas City game, multiple touchdowns. He's been pretty good all year. But then he got hurt this past week. He's not playing. Actually, it was a couple weeks, right? Because he didn't play in the Tampa game. Did he?
I don't remember. See, this is what sucks about taking a couple of weeks off is my memory just.
Yeah.
I can tell you who scored touchdowns in 2018. Detroit Lions, Buffalo Bills. Bills wore color rush uniforms. I can't tell you if Emmanuel Sanders played last week. No clue.
But let's say for right now that he did not play, because I truly do not remember him playing. Cole Beasley has had 2 really great seasons with the Bills, and he's had an okay season this year.
Mm-hmm.
He seems a step slower. It seems like him and Josh Allen are not quite on the same page. Yesterday was probably more on Allen because he did miss Beasley early, like on a couple of high throws. And like, if there's one place you can't throw when throwing towards Cole Beasley, it's like you can't miss him high.
Mm-hmm.
Like
he's got to struggle.
Can't do it.
Right, just given, it's just some natural shortcomings, if you will.
That's just math coming into play here. But it kind of seems like Cole Beasley, he's had some good games. The Tennessee game, he was really good in. And then the Dolphins game, the second Dolphins game, where he was just like all over the place and just dominating them. He's still a solid player, but it might be time to move on from him, given the way that Gabe Davis brings a different element to this offense. His size alone really warrants something special, because his size in combination with his blocking ability is what makes him special to me. Because you're then able to use him in different formations and in different sets in ways you would not normally use a wide receiver. Mm-hmm. Like you can use him as this sort of movable H-back type in the backfield and have him come across on split zones. You can use him as a big slot receiver where he's just got super consistent hands and can make contested catches. And this is just what Gabe Davis does. It's still really, really impressive to see Gabe Davis doing what he does. And I think that he deserves more playing time. I think just about everybody that's been watching the Bills the last couple of weeks has been saying this, so I'm not exactly breaking any ground here. But yeah, I want to see more Gabe Davis. And I think the order of operations for the wide receiver room needs to change. I think moving Beasley down and seeing more Gabe Davis, Emmanuel Sanders, and of course Stephon Diggs is as the number one. I think that's the way it needs to be moving forward.
You all will hear my thoughts on Gabriel Davis momentarily in the next segment. But the Beasley talk, the Beasley conversation is an interesting one, because it has to be said that he played injured for much of the season. He's had a rib injury that he's kind of been nagging, or that's been nagging along, I should say. And then the emergence of Dawson Knox as a pass catcher, especially when you consider that they both get targets over the middle of the field, and Knox has been one of Allen's favorite targets this year. So his emergence as a reliable pass catcher, sometimes, but his emergence, his usage in the passing game has kind of eaten into Beasley's, targets a little bit, which is, it's kind of, I guess, the buzzword of the podcast, or the takeaway word of the podcast, is circumstantial. Cole Beasley's lack of production this year is circumstantial, given his injury and then Dawson Knox's emergence. But there are people saying in the comments that that Cole Beasley still has good years left in him. I agree, but I do think that I don't want the Bills to move on from Cole Beasley, just because I do think he's still a good player. He's a nice piece to have, but
I'm not saying Cole Beasley is washed or anything. He's obviously not. It's
You're just saying Gabriel Davis needs to play more because he does.
There needs to be a shift in the market share, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All I'm saying is that if the Bills do make a change in the slot, they should get a like a slot receiver running back hybrid, someone in the vein of like Laviska Shenault, maybe. I think that would be a fun. You're gonna leave. You're just gonna exit out.
I might leave at this point. This is just gonna be the Kyle Silagyi, Laviska Shenault hour.
And what's wrong with that?
Nothing's wrong with that.
You just don't want to be associated with
either, but there's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with it. I just choose not to be associated with it. Moving on to what went right. Gabriel Davis. Yes. Again, there is no reason. Well, there are reasons, circumstantial, as I said, but there is no good reason why Gabriel Davis hasn't started playing more until a couple weeks ago. This guy is hypothetically, ideally too good to keep off of the field. Yesterday had 5 receptions for 85 yards, 2 touchdowns, 17 yards per catch, led the team in all receiving categories yesterday. I understand you want to get, again, Diggs needs to be on the field. You had Sanders, who was playing well. Knox has emerged, and you want to get Cole Beasley targets. But, like, it's an embarrassment of riches is what the Bills have. And I think that it sucks because it is costing a guy like Gabe Davis, valuable snap share, right? Big playability or, potential big plays that the Bills are leaving off the field because they just have too many good players, right? They can't get Gabe Davis on the field. This man is a walking big play. I feel like he is always, to quote John Murphy from an old radio broadcast, he's always wide ass open. Like I feel like every time he's on the field, he finds a way to get open. He is without a doubt the best sideline receiver I have ever seen on the Buffalo Bills, and he's only in year 2. I didn't notice his sideline ability until last year, or until the last playoffs against the Colts.
Yeah.
When he had like 2 back-to-back insane sideline catches, and he's had a few this year. A few great sideline catches. And also Nick writes, Gabe Davis, very handsome. Also yes, he is. Very, very true. Great point. But yes, that threw me off. That one got me. But just no reason why he hasn't been on the field more often. And I'm glad that they're getting him on the field more often because, again, 4 touchdowns in his last 3 games, 6 on the year, probably going to break his career high, which he set last year, 7. Obviously, he set his career high in his rookie season.
Crazy how that works.
But I do think that Gabe Davis with Sanders, even when Sanders comes back, like you said, they can't keep Davis off the field. He's been too productive.
Yeah, I mean, and I kind of, after, I think it was the last preseason game, I wrote about something that Josh Allen said after the game, which was, this is what he said. For a young guy who's going into his second year, it feels like he's been in the league for a long time. He's got a natural, calm presence to him as well. He's a guy you have a lot of trust in, and I have a lot of trust in. He consistently makes plays into being his type of role where he's not asked to be the number 1 or not really the number 2, but when his name is called, he makes them. He's got so much potential. I'm excited to see him grow this year, and he's going to be good for this offense and good for this team for a long time. To say about someone who's only who's in his second year now, just say that he's this calm presence, this sort of like security, very trustworthy guy is something you say about a receiver who's like 6 years in the NFL. Not
about Emmanuel Sanders,
right? Like this is sort of why they got Emmanuel Sanders. And they're saying this about, and he's saying this about Gabe Davis. And somebody mentioned that Allen has Gabe also seems to have great chemistry with Josh. Honestly, true. This is accurate. I'm not disagreeing with this at all. Josh Allen kind of seems to have good chemistry with everyone he throws to. Mm-hmm. Like, him and Diggs are obviously on the same page. Him and Cole Beasley are, at least, especially in the previous 2 years, all really solid chemistry. Gabe Davis is there. Emmanuel Sanders with one offseason. I mean, it was like those two were just like in sync. And then, Allen and Knox are like best buds. And it's just like the kind of a weird, underrated part of Josh Allen. It's just like he never really seems out of sync with like a particular receiver or two. It's just like
Tommy Sweeney.
Well, that seems more
volleyball spike.
that
was
seems more like
hilarious.
a Tommy Sweeney
Yeah, that's
problem.
not on Allen. That's a Tommy Sweeney for getting the sport. Quite funny. But yes, Gabe Davis. I think we've said everything that needs to be said about Gabe Davis.
Yes.
The dude is electric. Needs to have his snap share has been increasing in recent weeks, but I think it's going to continue to increase. He'll be the wide receiver 2 next year, and he'll set a career high in touchdowns with 9.
Good point. Zay Jones.
I remember a touchdown pass from Allen to Zay Jones week. Okay, this is just me proving what I said earlier about how I don't remember if Emmanuel Sanders played last year, but I can tell you anything that happened 4 years ago. But, I remember week 17 against the Dolphins. He threw it behind Zay Jones. And it just actually worked because Zay had to step back for it, and then he evaded a defender because the throw was off, and he just kind of did a spin. It was great. It was some great chemistry, right? Intentional bad throw from Josh Allen to Zay Jones, and it paid off. Yes, and Robert Jones is going to now find this podcast, and he's going to cancel me.
Robert Jones and Odell Beckham Sr. just trying to stick up for their kids.
Can you imagine their podcast? That would be an incredible show.
They'd somehow still talk about Laviska Shenault.
Hey, if they had me on as a guest, I know we're here to talk about Zay Jones and OBJ, right? The top 2 receivers in the league. But let me tell you about the best running receiver, Laviska Shenault. Are you guys happy about Stevenson returning punts? I'm happy that, I guess, giving Stevenson the ability to return punts, making him the returner. And he looked good yesterday, I think. As a returner, Stevenson looked pretty good. But that then opened up Isaiah McKenzie, gave him the ability to be involved in the offense, and he made a good play, or a few good plays offensively, which McKenzie has had no role offensively this year for the most part, but now getting him back involved in the offense. So,
and that was like after an offseason where everyone was like, oh, Isaiah McKenzie's having like the best offseason he's had at wide receiver. And it's like, oh, okay. And then nothing happened after that.
I love preseason talking points. They are the best. Shaq, for 3 years in a row, Shaq Lawson came into camp in the best shape of his life.
Shaq Lawson was a solid player.
I love Shaq Lawson. I love Shaq Lawson. It was just hilarious every year. Oh, this dude's in great shape. Remember last year when we told you he was in great shape? He was a bum, actually. Now he's in great shape. And then the next year, we lied the last 2 years. This is the year. And it just, he's in great shape. Don't get me wrong. But it was just every year. He's in better shape now. All right, David. What went right for you?
This is going to be a relatively quick one because it doesn't need to be super in depth, but like the Patriots game, much as nobody wants to think or talk about that, Dawson Knox really struggled in that game. Multiple drops, including what would have been a really tough catch, but a critical moment where he could have scored the game-winning touchdown. Drops it. You know what? Comes back the last 2 weeks. He's been like good. It truly feels like he completely shook off whatever happened in that game. And that was obviously a weird game to begin with. But, for somebody who obviously struggled with drops coming into this year, his first years kind of really struggled with that, and just really struggled to be consistent, having a game like what happened with him on Monday night could have really just like kind of sunk him for the rest of the year, where he's just like, only getting a couple catches, not really making the plays that he was. Nope. Just throw that all right back out the window where it belongs. Because he, in that Tampa game, I mean, that play where he made that great run after the catch, like straight down the middle of the field against Tampa, and like almost really came pretty close to getting into the end zone near the end of the game. It was really impressive. He's making plays against the Panthers. It was a very, very good, encouraging couple weeks for Dawson Knox, and that's what you want to see for him, especially after a bad game. The mental stuff can be really tough to overcome in those circumstances. It's good to just see him go right back out there and play well. So good for Dawson Knox.
Great for Dawson Knox. And again, I think that I had a point, but I lost the point. So we're just gonna move on. So I don't sit here trying to remember what I was going to say for 5 minutes. So, for me, what went wrong in this game, besides largely it's the offense kind of being inconsistent, but you can kind of attribute that to the play of the offensive line. Yes, we're talking about the offensive line again.
What?
I know, crazy, right? And in this week, it's easier to give them a pass because, again, you're going up against a very good group of pass rushers, a good defense, but an athletic group of pass rushers, as you said earlier. Hassan Reddick, Brian Burns is just insane. He's just an incredible player.
The amount of different types of moves that dude has is kind of ridiculous. I feel like every game he's whipping out 7 different pass rush moves. It's insane.
He's a fun player. Not against the Bills. I don't like that. Well, but in other games, I like when Brian Burns does plays well. But and again, just the stuff that happened before the game with Dion Dawkins going on the COVID list, John Feliciano not being able to play. Obviously, that kind of threw the offensive line into turmoil there. So you have to move Spencer Brown. You have to get Butker and Ford in the game. So you're not expecting great results. And great results is what we did not get. Allen was pressured a total of 20 times, according to PFF. The DPR, which stands for something, I'm sure. But it's, I guess, pressures of any kind. Allen was pressured 20 times. This is the second week in a row in which he was pressured more than 20 times. That's not a good number. He's been pressured more than 20 times a lot this season, which if your quarterback is being pressured 20 times each game, I mean, Allen overcame it yesterday, had a good game, I would say. Not the, MVP Josh Allen we've come to expect, missed a few throws, but largely a good game from Josh Allen. But he was sacked 4 times, just under duress for most of the game. Spencer Brown, we already talked about him, allowed 3 pressures. Ike Butker allowed 2 pressures. Mitch Morse 3. Cody Ford 3. Daryl Williams, who didn't stick out. I wonder why. It's because he allowed 0 pressures.
I wrote this in my recap yesterday. I said Daryl Williams played adequately, if somewhat unspectacularly. Mm-hmm. I think I need to correct that. I've never been a huge Daryl Williams person. I thought his season last year at right tackle was kind of we'll see if he could do it again. Mm-hmm. And he did struggle early on, and then he moved him to right guard, where he's definitely been better. I thought moving him back out to right tackle, I was like, oh my gosh, against this pass rush, this is going to be a mess. He not the problem yesterday.
Yeah,
he was very good against his former team. So hats off to
our revenge game. Didn't even think about that. FA with their revenge game.
Listen, there were a dozen revenge games. This whole game is just incestual revenge games between these two franchises. There's too much going on.
It couldn't be the Dan Morgan revenge game though. Wonder if he was there. I don't know, but yes, Daryl Williams 0 pressures and a bunch of penalties from this offensive line, namely Spencer Brown with 5, which we've talked about. We don't need to talk anymore about Spencer Brown, but again, it struggled to get consistent push in the run game. Really came on when they needed to run out the clock, them making space for Singletary, and Singletary kind of ate up the clock there at the end of the game. But largely, I would say a minus game from the offensive line. Yeah. But again, you weren't expecting, given the circumstances, given that the line hasn't been good all year, and you take away 2 players, maybe one of their best 2 linemen, and then John Feliciano as well. And you take them away, and you replace them with the 3rd round rookie, and it just causes everything to shuffle around. And obviously you're not expecting great results, and they didn't get those. But again, I would say hopefully this can be fixed moving forward, but I don't think it can be. So
not this season.
Roman writes, did Daryl Johnson get to play at all?
I am looking at the game book right now, and it looks like somebody in the comments said Daryl Johnson was not active, which is accurate. So,
David, I don't know if you know my history with Daryl Johnson, but I am maybe
Daryl Johnson. This is a Daryl Johnson support cast.
Thank you.
We love our weird semi-athletic, skinny defensive end.
I love Daryl Johnson.
That man.
I interviewed him for the Bills website. My hand is bleeding. What the heck? Sorry. This is why you watch the podcast. I have no idea. My hand just started bleeding. I don't know what's going on, man. I'm falling apart.
We're officially off the rails.
Anyway, I interviewed Daryl Johnson after the 2019 draft. So after the 2018 season, and he said that the Bills were going to win the Super Bowl, and my editor edited it out of the article. So
wow,
unfortunate. David, what went wrong in this game?
So this might be approaching hot take territory. I don't care. A lot has been made about the Bills' run defense in the last month or so, pretty much since the Colts game where they just got run over by Jonathan Taylor and the Colts offensive line. Then they struggled against the Patriots on Monday night. Then they had Leonard Fournette rip off a 47-yard run and run for 100 yards in the Tampa game. Obviously, some things were made about the run defense, whether it was embarrassing and all that. Yesterday was the worst run defense performance they've had all year. And I say that because the Colts, the Patriots, the Bucks, they all have top tier offensive lines that are just filled with absolute bullies. I don't know if Kyle, let's just save space. We can talk about this. I don't know if you were bullied in high school or at any point in your academic career. But those guys are now playing offensive line for the Patriots, Colts, and Buccaneers right now. Those are the types of dudes that are playing in this league. And it is one thing to have that happen against those types of offenses. And I know Brandon Thorne in particular has called the Bucs O-line 1, which coming from him, who knows offensive line play more than probably 99% of people that talk about offensive line play. I could see that. Kyle Chadlocky.
Nick and I went to high school together. So
there you go. He would know. Definitely not lying like people do when talking about high school.
I love that I give off, this kid was an asshole. That's the energy I give off. This guy sucked.
But again, going back to the run defense, it's one thing to give up 100 yards rushing or even 200 yards rushing against teams that have those types of offensive lines. The Panthers' offensive line is god-awful. And we saw that yesterday based on how great the Bills' pass rush was yesterday, which was fantastic. I mean, they pressured Cam, I think, on more than 50% of his snaps, which is absurd. FAO bought out a couple of sacks. There were a couple of sacks thrown in there. Great game for the Bills' pass rush. But, the run defense, it wasn't like they were awful. But, man, there's no reason why the Panthers should have had more than 70, 80 yards rushing total in this game. And they didn't get that much more out of that. But man, it just felt like they were still getting push against a defensive line that really should have been able to just dominate this team up front. And they still did. I feel like I'm being really hard because they still played relatively well, but it's just they should have been better than what they were. And I'm not going to completely bag on the Bills' run defense when they're going against the absolute best offensive lines in the NFL. Sure, you want them to do better. That's fine. But the Panthers' offensive line is just atrocious. I mean, it's so bad and so mismanaged and so poorly coached. I was expecting maybe they get 6 points. Of course, that was before. If you hear yelling, that's my roommate who is a Browns fan and apparently losing his mind right now.
Could someone tell us in the chat what's going on in that game?
Yeah, I mean, Roman brings up something a great point. Cam Irving was playing left tackle. Cam Irving played left tackle at Florida State, and he was.
That is a great point, Roman.
Like Cam Irving got moved to center when he was in college because he was so bad at left tackle. And like then the Panthers just decided, oh, let's just play him at left tackle. And he's atrocious. Like, wow, craziness. The Panthers have a horrible offensive line. They should have gotten their butts kicked, and they kind of did. And, but it should have been not even close coming into the fourth quarter. The Bills should have really shut down that offense from the get-go. It shouldn't have even been remotely close at that point. And I think the run defense was responsible for that, at least majority responsible for that. Some of that is just Cam scrambling on passing plays, which like sometimes that just happens with an athletic quarterback. But some of it was just like, why are you letting Chuba Hubbard run for 10 yards? Like, come on. So
I understand the critique for sure, right? But like I tend to not necessarily play devil's advocate, but I more side with the counter argument that you were bringing up there, where like it wasn't bad, like it obviously it wasn't great, but I feel like a lot of the yardage came in chunk plays, came with Cam Newton picking up a chunk of yardage. Chuba Hubbard had like a 21-yard run, and then Robbie Anderson had a 30-yard end around. Do you think Robbie Anderson looked at the Bills logo at midfield and said, "What's that bear doing?" I hope so. And they were just like, "The bear? That's a buffalo. What are you talking about?" I hope
that's
that
really
happens.
Buffalo, man.
Right. See, this is a tangent, but I was watching the game with my mom yesterday, and I was telling her the Robbie Anderson, "What's that bear doing?" story. And again, we're playing the Panthers, and she's like, "Oh, I thought it was a Jaguar." They're called the Panthers, people. Why is it so confusing? Like,
to be fair, Panthers and the Jaguars both came into the NFL at the same time.
Yes, I'll give her a pass because she knows her NFL history.
That's right.
But yes, and again, I don't want to be the guy who excuses chunk plays or whatever, but like, because I hate the people that are like, if you take away the best plays and they didn't do that well, it's like, yeah, you take away the best part of anything and it's not great, right? In anything in life, but I do think it wasn't a great outing from or not the offensive line, or that too, but the run defense obviously did leave a bit to be desired. But I'm not, hitting the panic button because this offense or this defensive line has been so stout against the run, against average running backs all year. But maybe we are starting to see cracks in the facade, because before it was just so I read something in chat. It was just they were not doing well against the elite running backs, but now, Chuba Hubbard and Cam Newton are putting up how many yards, and Robbie Anderson too. So, I'm like cautiously optimistic about the run defense moving forward here. I guess something happened in the game. People are going crazy in the chat. So
my roommate went silent, so I think the Browns lost.
Oh God, you want to go check on him?
Yeah. No. Let's finish this out. I can revive him later.
So we're an hour deep, but we could just do a quick little Patriots preview here. They're a good team. Lost a weird game to the Colts. Is Jonathan Taylor going to win MVP?
No. I think Aaron Rodgers will win MVP, but like Jonathan Taylor definitely deserves to be in the conversation. I mean, like that run really was something special, because that wasn't just like, oh, he just followed his offensive line and like made one guy miss. He made like multiple guys miss and just outran everyone. And that's like what's super impressive about Jonathan Taylor to me. Not that this has anything to do with the Patriots, but he has the ability to make people miss and also run away from defensive backs. But like with the Patriots, that was such a weird game from them, because the Colts didn't play a good game either. Like Carson Wentz literally completed 5 passes the entire game, which is absurdly bad. It's almost as bad as letting your quarterback only throw 3 times in a game. Not that anyone has any experience
I've
doing
never
that.
seen
That would
that
be
happen.
absurd. That would be like a high school game plan, whatever. But the Colts really didn't play a good game. It was really just that the Patriots played a worse game, which is not what the Patriots do. Like, the Patriots just kind of let other teams fail by making mistakes on penalties or special teams or turning the ball over, etc. They were the ones turning the ball over. They had a punt blocked for a touchdown, which I think is not the first time that's happened for them this year, which is very weird for a Bill Belichick team to be bad on special teams like that. If Bill Belichick has a brain aneurysm, it's probably going to be because of that. And then they had penalties as well. It was a very un-Patriots-like game. Now, do I actually expect that to be the case when they play the Bills? Probably not. So, do we believe in this Bills team to go into Foxborough off of a Patriots bad week of football to be able to overcome things when the Patriots aren't beating themselves? I don't know. I don't know one way or another. I think the Bills are certainly capable, but the Bills have also been very famous this year for basically beating themselves.
Yes.
I mean, that's how they lost that Jags game. They completely let the Colts game get away from them because of that. They have a tendency to really beat themselves. It was like that in the first Patriots game as well. They just, couldn't find a way to overcome their own mistakes. They need to get this game, period. Don't leave things to the final week of the season, the pre-postseason week, to have all these different mathematics play out and try to hope everything comes into your favor. Take control of this division. If they win this game, which they are certainly capable of doing, their last two games are the Falcons and the Jets. And come on. That's nothing to this team. Because this team has been able to beat the teams they're supposed to beat, minus the Jaguars. Where again, they really just end up beating themselves that way. But it's just the Patriots are a team that they have to be able to beat here in this situation. Don't let this rookie quarterback who could not do anything, who literally was coached to not do anything against you last time, be the reason you lose this game. I cannot, for the life of me, imagine a Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier defense letting a rookie quarterback that is so limited as Mac Jones is beating them. The real question is just going to be, can this run defense hold up well enough? Are the Bills on all phases of the game going to limit the number of penalties that they have and the number of mistakes they have to where the Patriots just can't finish it out the way that they normally do? That's what I think that comes down to.
The weather doesn't look like it's going to play much of a factor. It's just going to be cold.
Good.
So, right, it's just going to be a regular December game in Foxborough.
Because that discourse is already just exhausting, and that's before you get into anything else.
Are they having dome debates in Foxborough?
That's a great question. Probably not, because they actually win.
Right, where it doesn't
They've
matter.
won Super Bowls, so who cares?
No one gives a shit if there's a dome or not. It's like, oh no, it's warm when we do the Super Bowl parade, so who cares? But yeah, it's a winnable game, as you said. As every game with this team, it's a winnable game. But we'll talk about it next week. I guess.
Yes.
So moving on to hot takes, and then we'll get out of here because we've already gone over on time. But so my hot take for this game, maybe the hottest take I've had all year, it's that Mac Jones, not only will Mac Jones throw more than 3 passes in this game, he will throw more than 3 passes on a single drive.
Wrong.
Wrong. Wrong.
No, I mean,
I'm Team Dome as well.
Oh yeah, I love a good dome.
Who doesn't love Dome?
Yeah, the Dimmadome. Anyway,
all right.
Hot takes. I feel like I had my hot take earlier with the run defense.
You did,
but yeah, I you know what? We're gonna do a hot take that I will absolutely 1,000% regret later, which is that the Bills will win this game against the Patriots in Foxborough.
My hot take is that they win out, right? They win out, they win the division. That's what my actual hot take is. Because I think they are going to win. I think that, look, Sean McDermott, to quote Jerry Sullivan, is embarrassed. You kind of, how did you ask? I don't want to, I'm not shitting on Jerry Sullivan here, but how do you ask a team if they're embarrassed after they lose a close game, but not ask if a team is embarrassed after their left tackle drinks a beer in the middle of a game? Like, where is the dichotomy? Where are we drawing the line? I don't. Again, I thought it was hilarious.
That is a question for Jerry Sullivan to answer and to ask. Unfortunately, he's not going to do that. And we can dunk on Jerry Sullivan at different times, as well as we should. But this is not that time.
If I still had a media credential, David, I promise you, I would have worded the question the exact same way as Jerry Sullivan, but I would have said about drinking a beer in the middle of a game. Just like Spencer Brown, first time in NFL history, drinks a beer in the middle of the game. Is that embarrassing? Like, and then they walk off. Sean McDermott walks off. He's had enough of the Spencer Brown drinking beer questions. But yeah, this team is capable of winning out, and I think they will. Again, to go back to what my point was about Sean McDermott, you saw after that game where he says, let's not give Bill Belichick too much credit. And a lot of people took that and ran with it as like, oh, he's, not giving Bill Belichick credit because that's what he said. But like, it was more so he was like, look, they didn't do anything, they didn't do anything
crazy. Right, yeah. They just ran the ball. Like, right. People are acting like he rewrote the art of war. Like, that's all he was saying. It was like, relax. Like, this was not some great genius game plan. They just ran the ball better.
Yeah.
And we didn't defend the run all that well. That's it. Like, it wasn't complicated. People were acting like Bill Belichick is like galaxy braining people on Monday Night Football by not letting his rookie quarterback throw more than 3 times.
I feel like that's what it always is, though, right? Is sometimes you'll just see like a coach do like a very elementary, basic thing, like run the ball 50 times, and they'll be like, "Oh, that's incredible, genius move," and it's like he ran the ball when it was windy. Like, what? What are we doing? What is this?
Yeah.
Oh God. Anyway, yes, McDermott. He again still can't beat Brady. Really, struggles. When teams are similar in strength, struggles to beat Belichick. My real hot take is Sean McDermott is about equivalent to Marvin Lewis.
Marvin Lewis never won a playoff game. Never even sniffed the AFC Championship. Get out of here. That's all I have to say.
Nick, what are you doing? Nick, no.
Come get your mans, Kyle.
I know, right? They're going to win out. Those are going to win out. All right. Thank you guys for listening. My hand is not bleeding anymore. That's the hand.
Good. I was worried about that.
You can please check out cover1.net. There you will see the writing of David, Rob, and I, and other people sometimes. There's numerous podcasts on the Cover One YouTube channel and the website and Spotify and iTunes and anywhere that you listen to podcasts. Bunch of good stuff that we're always producing. We have the Air Raid Hour coming on here in a couple of minutes. Now we've gone so long that it's now in minutes territory in which the Air Raid Hour will be on. So you can check them out at 9:00, I believe they start. So tell them the Roundup sent you if you want to. Right. Don Keith writes, "Hey guys, hey, we're heading out.
Bye.
Irish goodbye. But thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe to Cover One Premium if you are interested. There, you will have access to the Cover One Premium Slack, in which thank you, thank you guys. Oh wow, super kind. You'll have access to the Cover One Premium Slack, in which you can talk to us and a bunch of other Bills fans, hundreds of Bills fans in there, always talking about football and other great stuff. So again, if you're interested, Cover One Premium, make sure to check out Underdog Fantasy. Again, use promo code Cover1. Make sure to follow Cover One on Twitter, on Instagram, on TikTok. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Do that, all that good stuff. David, where can the people follow you on Twitter?
You follow me right where it says, right next to my name, at DFauxy, DFAUXY. I have a lot of extremely lukewarm takes on there. And the occasional semi-decent actual football take. Yeah. So good night to everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Happy holidays. Have to throw that
Indeed.
out there. Follow me on Twitter at Kyle Silagyi if you want to. If not, that's cool. All right. We'll talk to you guys next week. Bye-bye.